challenge anybody listening to this, how many times in your life do you hear a good idea? Do you get inspired? Do you get excited because of the information you've been given and then go to do nothing with it? And that's the problem with training. It can't just be an event. And that's where coaching comes in. Coaching is about working with someone. I really like this phrase, someone whose history is your future. Someone that has simply done what you've done, been where you want to be, and got the experience and the wisdom to share.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Ackers. So Mark is co-founder and head of sales at MySalesCoach. He's also best-selling author of Problem Prospecting. So Mark, welcome.
Hi, Fred. Thanks for having me.
I've got a choice. I know we said we were going to talk about one thing, but if I went the other way, you'd be equally comfortable, I suspect.
Depends what way we're going, but yeah.
Which way we go? So flip a coin. We were chatting before about coaching, and it's clear I really do want to speak to you about coaching. I knew you were fairly keen, as one tends to be, to found a business around it. But I mean, you're absolutely passionate about this stuff, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
It's a podcast, mate. Long answer.
So, where do we begin? I think what's really interesting is I'm quite open about this. Is I never wanted to be in sales. So I followed the stereotype. Sales was a dirty word. You did sales if you wasn't good at anything else. And I did a marketing degree. When I left university, I kept getting offered sales roles and, like telesales, business development executive roles, modern day SDI, I suppose. But I kept turning them down. I didn't want to turn my back on my degree. Marketing was for me. And about a year in to my marketing role, I found myself constantly staring at the sales team, being a little bit like, I should be doing that. I think I could do a good job there, and I want to earn the commission that they're earning. Here's the thing, that was all just raw belief that I could communicate with people and have a conversation. And that's what I felt sales was. It was just the ability to speak to people. And obviously there's some truth to that, but we both know there's more to it. Anyway, I made the switch. I was in sales for about 7 years, worked for a couple of companies, and I had success, but nothing to write home about, nothing to be proud of. I suppose, had enough conversations to have enough sales to keep me going. And then I joined a company called Refract, which I know you'd have been familiar with. It's now a Lego, got acquired by a Lego a few years ago. I joined a company called Refract as part of like one of the early members of the team. And that business was trying to help managers review and coach sales conversations. And one day, my boss, who was the CEO of Refract, he said to me, I think I should give you some coaching. And I remember thinking, I don't know if that's for me. Like, I felt like my ego kind of got in the way a little bit. What do you mean you're going to give me some coaching? Anyway, he invited me to join him at Costa at 8 o'clock on a Friday morning. I remember it was a cold, wet, miserable day. I went and sat down with him in Costa, and I'll never forget, he said to me, I've listened to one of your recent sales calls. I've coached this like you're a big boy. So I've been very direct. Let's go through it. And like, I've known Kev for, at this point, for maybe 8 years. So I'm comfortable with him. But what happened next was we went through one of my calls, and I don't think it's unfair to say, pulled apart the conversation. So many things were reviewed, so many things were commented on, and I took it quite badly. Like, obviously put a brave face on, but I felt like I was being attacked. And I think part of that was it was coming from who was the CEO of the business, despite knowing him. And I remember at the end of the session, he said, "Well, I thought that was really good. We should do this again." And I honestly, I remember thinking, I bloody hope not. I hope this is a one-off. And what led to that is for the next sort of 8-9 months, every Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning, I was meeting Kev at Costa, and he was reviewing one of my calls. And I remember there was one point where he said to me, "Just so you know, I've not changed how I coach your calls. I've been just as harsh, just as direct. But have you noticed you don't get any criticism now? Like very little. It's a lot of praise, and that is because of how far you've come." I remember thinking, there's something in this coaching. There's something in this, and since then, been on a journey where I've just tried to become a student of sales. I've tried to take on as much as I can. So be that books, podcasts, webinars. LinkedIn's a great resource if you know who to follow, and and when it really started to change for me in terms of thinking, actually, coaching's one thing for me, but I can help other people as well, was at the start of COVID. So me, Rich, and Stu, who wrote the book Problem Prospecting that you referenced, genuinely can't remember whose idea this was. If I'm going to give someone credit, I think it was Rich's idea. Might not be. I think it was Rich's idea. Maybe I should say it was mine. But he said, "Why don't we do a webinar for everybody that is now working from home, everybody that's in a sales job that don't get the coaching that we get, that are now working from their bedrooms, working from their kitchen tables, their manager isn't available to them on demand. This is the toughest time they've ever experienced. They've got to sell their way through it, or they're going to be furloughed." Right. It was a real time uncertainty. So me, Rich, and Stu was like, let's do it. We'll do a webinar. We're going to coach people on how to sell better. We're going to include call clips, emails that we've been sending, talk tracks, objection handling. And we kind of thought, look, if 50 people register and 10 people turn up, we'd be quite pleased with that. I remember absolutely crapping myself when I saw there was 900 plus people registered to turn up, and the vast majority of them, well, actually it must be more because there was over 900 on the webinar. So I don't know how. I mean, we had to upgrade Zoom a few times. So I think there was like 960 people on this Zoom, and we were on for like an hour and a half. We just extended it beyond the 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and we realised that we can help people. Coaching is something that we can share our experiences, and we can do that. And we ended up doing like 11 of those webinars. And then I had the idea to write the book Problem Prospecting, which was...
That was your idea, yeah.
That was my...
Yeah,
I definitely made... There's the screenshot of the text message on my LinkedIn profile with the kind of like how it started, how it's going. And I said to the lads, again, do you remember when we all started our sales careers? No one coached us. No one told us how to make a cold call, how to write an email. No one showed us what a calendar invite looked like. No one told us how to use LinkedIn. But now SDRs have got so much more to learn, right? Like when we started out in sales, I genuinely had a Yellow Pages, and a Thompson Local, and I had business cards, and I had Google, and LinkedIn was a CV library. I just called people up. And again, it's only because I worked really hard and I made the dials that I have the success. It wasn't because I was talented or knew what I was doing. So we thought, if we write this book and fill it with actionable tips and tricks that someone should get from a manager, but they're not, we can help so many other SDRs and AEs that prospect. And one of the things that I love seeing is the book on LinkedIn filled with like sticky notes, because that's how it's intended to be read. Like you keep it by your side. I need to write an email. Let me go to that chapter. I need to make a cold call. Let me go to that chapter. And then that has all led me to a place where I've done private coaching. And then when Refract was acquired by Lego, I had a great time there, like an amazing company, really well looked after, but it was time for me to do something else. And Kevin Bills, who was the co-founder of Refract and the co-founder of a previous business I worked at, he invited me to his house and he said, would you ever be interested in starting a new business? And my words to him were, it has to have two things for me. I have to sell to sales leaders because that's what I enjoy. And I have to be solving the problem of sales coaching because that's what I care about. And he literally turned his laptop round and it said, "My sales coach." And honestly, within like 10 seconds, like, I'm in, let's go. Like, let's do it. And we're just on this mission to help as many sales professionals as we can get the coaching that they need, the coaching that they deserve to accelerate them towards their goals as quickly as possible and fulfill their potential. And that is the long story, my friend.
No, it's an awesome story. I love it. I love it. And what I love about it is when you hear somebody who is aligning to their purpose, and it's clear that's what you're doing. And then part of me's going, I wonder if we just take the podcast down that route. Well, maybe another time we will talk about aligned to purpose and why that is so key, for your energy, your drive, and the rest of it. But we said we talk about coaching, so
it is aligned to my purpose, so maybe we're doing both at the same time.
Well, you are in alignment to purpose in action, but we could really pull the whole thing apart. But coaching then, so let's step right back to basics then. What is coaching? There might be people listening to this go, okay, coach, you talk about this coaching training, yeah, it's all the same, isn't it?
So I love that you've said it's all the same. And I know you're doing that to sort of set me up in a way, not that this has been pre-planned, but I think that's the first thing. People confuse training and coaching. They often use the words interchangeably, and I understand why, but they are different things. So training is really important. Like, everybody needs training. And training comes in various formats, right? It can be when you think of training, it can be someone at the front of a classroom with a presentation or a whiteboard giving out information. And that is what training is. It's taking on information in whatever format from a trainer, from a book, from a podcast, from a webinar. It is taking information designed for the masses, delivered to you however you want to be trained. Training, as I say, is very important. It should inspire you. It should motivate you. It should teach you something new. It should fire you up and give you the ideas. Here's the problem with that. And I challenge anybody listening to this. How many times in your life do you hear a good idea? Do you get inspired? Do you get excited because of the information you've been given and then go to do nothing with it? And that's the problem with training. It can't just be an event. And that's where coaching comes in. Coaching is about working with someone. I really like this phrase, someone whose history is your future. Someone that has simply done what you've done, been where you want to be, and got the experience and the wisdom to share. But the coach isn't a trainer. The coach gets into your heart, gets into your head, works out where you need help. They make a safe space so you can be vulnerable, because to be coached, you've got to be vulnerable. And they say to you, right, where are you weak? What are your goals? What's going to stop you achieving those goals? Let's create a plan. And then I'm going to hold you accountable to that plan every time we meet. And that's what a coach does. They keep you on the track that you want to be on in the rhythm of success. They hold you accountable to your goals. They encourage, support, and motivate. And you know what? They call out the self-limiting beliefs, the excuses that we make for ourselves as to why we can't achieve our goals. And from time to time, of course, they'll tell you the answer, but largely it's about helping you realize what you need to do to be successful and hold you to that. And that is the difference between training and coaching. And that is what coaching is.
Awesome. That is such a really cool explanation of the two. Yeah, in fact, I was setting you up to explain that. No, that's very good. Those two together, and we're cooking on gas. Absolutely cooking on gas. Yeah. No, it's interesting actually. I've been doing, well, that's what I do, isn't it? So I'm always interested in this stuff. And I was looking about, how people do get inspired and motivated and worked up and excited about doing stuff, when they learn, as in when they receive information. And I didn't know this until recently, is apparently when they start thinking about going to do something, it fires the same dopamine effect of actually doing it.
Yeah.
So you do start to go, oh yeah, I'm going to do all these things, I do all these things. I've read this book, I've watched this YouTube video, I've gone on this training course. And your brain's getting all excited because you've thought about doing it rather than actually doing it. So yeah, that's where coaches come in to go, well, let's go,
Well,
make it happen.
exactly. Like the same sort of connection is people will buy a book because they feel like it's going to help them. So it'll remedy but actually it's the buying of the book that gives you the hit that you need, but then you probably never read it. And we've all bought books that we've had best intentions never read. The coach will be turning the pages for you and making sure you read that and put it into practice as well.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, the coach turns the pages and underlines the stuff and writes it onto a separate sheet of what you're actually going to be doing. Yeah. I'm interested about the accountability piece because some people will push back at that and say, nah, you shouldn't have to hold somebody accountable because if they're going to do it, they're going to do it themselves. But you were very clear. You mentioned it 2 or 3 times that, yeah, accountable, come back, talk about how you're getting on with as being part and parcel of coaching process. So you obviously think that is key.
So accountability is key. Look, humans are creatures of habit. Of course, you'll always get exceptions, and someone might be listening to this saying that's not me, but humans are creatures of habit. And so many times we can set goals of ourselves. Like, look at New Year's resolutions, right? Most of them, like high percent, are broken within 3 weeks because we set these goals of ourselves, but then we revert to type. We go back to what we know. Whereas a coach is going to hold you accountable. You know, look, you said you want to achieve this. What's changed? And there will be a self-limiting belief. There will be a barrier in the way. There will be maybe I don't know how to do it. And that's what the coach's job is, to kind of remove the excuses, remind you of your goals, hold you accountable, and help you along the path. Like a mentor is a nice word for that as well. But far too many research papers show that when you try to do something by yourself and you set yourself goals, you are less likely to hit them when it's internal. You kind of need to put it out there that this is what I'm looking to achieve and someone to help you along the way. People, of course, can be successful without a coach, but you know what? You're making the road to success, whatever success looks like for you, lonelier, longer, and full of mistakes that could have been avoided.
Yeah. I actually, it sounds like we've got very similar ideas on this. I mean, some people get really very pedantic about trainer, coach, mentor, very, very different things. Totally the definitions of coaches don't tell anybody anything. And you said, sometimes you'll tell people something. Pragmatic, not dogmatic, it sounds like. That's how I am. Look, we could beat around the bush here, but you don't know. You won't get to the answer. I'll just tell you. And then we'll work out how you can apply it. Well, and if pure coaches hate me, hate me.
Yeah, totally. Look, you don't know what you don't know. There's something in having a coach whose history is your future. There's something in having a coach that's been where you want to go. They will just have experience that you haven't got. And whilst a lot of the time you know the answer, you're just not confident enough to do it. There are times when you do draw a blank and a coach will help you. But the key is the relationship can't be the coach is telling you what to do all the time, because then they're not your ideas, they're not your goals, they're not your dreams.
Yeah. It's that takes into a kind of different realm of what coaches are all about, because coaching is weird, isn't it? Because are coaches selfish? Let me ask you that question. Are coaches selfish? And you can interpret that as you want.
Well, go on. Tell me what you mean by that. Where's that question come from?
Well, in many ways, the textbook answer is no, they're not, because they're doing it for the good of the other person and they shouldn't be trying to ride in on their silver charger and solve everything. But tell me you don't get a massive buzz out of helping somebody and seeing them go on the right path and seeing their success and thinking, awesome, I'll help that person. That's cool. Is that selfish, or is that, I don't know, maybe I'm playing with the words a bit too much.
Maybe. Look, I know what you're getting at there. The thing is, to be a great coach, it has got to be about the individual. And if you're constantly just serving up the answers, you've really got to question, what's the point of the session? If it's to make you feel good because you've got the answers, you've given, great, pat on the back to you. the coachee leaving that session just feels like they've been given answers, and it doesn't encourage them to think. It doesn't encourage them to be vulnerable and share their ideas and talk them through. I think when a coach is running a session where it's all about them and their answers, that's probably a need for approval, the coach needing to feel valued. Some of the best coaching sessions, the coach barely says anything. They just listen, and from time to time will ask a question to push the conversation along. But they're listening to that individual, and that individual, the more they talk about it and talk it through, the more often they come to realize the answers.
Yeah, and a great coach will give people time to think, won't they? They're very aware, I guess, is that somebody is going through a thought process now, where their eyes are moving in different patterns, or they just know somebody's thinking, and don't interrupt that.
Yeah,
just chill, let them get to where they're going to get to. And that's a skill. That's a skill.
I used to coach one SDR, and I know he used to get really mad at me because he just wanted the answers. But here's the thing: I knew the answers. I knew he knew the answers. And I knew that if he come up with it himself, he was far more likely to put it into practice because it was his idea, not my idea. And there would be times where I could tell he was just like, just tell me. And I'd be like, look, I know you know this. Let's go back. Let's talk it through. What do you think? Just share with me what you think. And more often than not, they would share the answer. I go, that's exactly what you should do. And they bought into it. Of course, there were times where I knew they just didn't know. They just didn't know what to do. This was a brand new experience for them. They weren't sure. They needed someone to just shine a bit of the path in front of them for them to continue walking. And that's what I would do. But it is about adapting. But I wouldn't do that to satisfy my need to feel like I've given value. It's the value is in the eyes of the coachee. They will decide what a good session is, not the coach.
Yeah. No, what I was saying is that's just a kind of a nice side effect, isn't it? That when somebody has got it, it's like, yeah, it's cool.
Of course.
So thinking about coaching and coaching process from your experience and the way you go about it, do you think that is process? Do we need it? Do we wing it? Best way.
So it's not about winging it, but equally it can't always be process driven. I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve from a coaching session. Is someone using this for mindset, where they want to talk to you about, let's relate to sales for a second, right? So some of the mindset challenges you might have if you've started out in sales, cold calling anxiety or reluctance, uncomfortable being measured by targets than intelligence or what you bring to the table. You might find it difficult or intimidating to speak to older, more senior prospects. So it's a mindset piece. The process really is you have to talk it through with the individual and really understand where that anxiety comes from and help them start to create a defense mechanism around that. It can be tactical. So again, if we stick with sales, it might be, how do you run a discovery call? How do you negotiate? Managers might want to talk, because top performers get promoted into manager roles. That doesn't mean they know what to do. So it might be that they want help with interviewing someone or putting someone on a pip or having a difficult conversation. So then tactically, you kind of need to role play and play it through and talk about that. And that can be more of a structured conversation around, tell me what you're looking to achieve. Tell me how you're doing that today. Tell me what results you're getting. Tell me where you think it's slipping. Let's review that. Let's give some feedback. It can be personal growth. Look, I'm an AE today. I want to be a sales manager, or I earn £50,000 a year. I want to earn £80,000 a year and be in this role in this company. Well, then it's about creating a process of what they need to do to get to that salary band, to get to that job, and it's about working with them. So I think processes definitely help, but it really depends on who you're coaching and what you're trying to achieve. And there'll be some people that it regularly changes what they need help with, depending on the moment, be that end of the month, end of the quarter, or if they've just joined a company or they've been the seasoned rep.
Yeah. So to be a good coach, again, if I can sort of interpret a little bit, it's less that, oh, I've learned how to use the grow model, for instance, than you are comfortable and have the skills associated with questioning, listening, empathizing, all that good stuff, and can pick from your skill set, what am I just going to do here now, because it's the right thing at the right time to help this person in what they're trying to do.
I believe so personally, yes.
Yeah. It's just easy to jump into grow, isn't it? Go, oh, let's just have a conversation this way around. I mean, yeah, if you've got that and you've got the skills, then yeah, again, you're the best place to do a good job with somebody. But yeah, okay, good. So your background in coaching, why it's so important, what it is. You've actually started to do a little bit of what I was going to ask anyway, of like, let's focus in on sales. Where can salespeople benefit from coaching? You said so-called call anxiety, reluctance, making discovery calls, personal growth, as in areas. What other stuff can coaching help with?
Everything. Like that's the top and bottom of it. Here's the thing, taking you back to why I didn't want to be in sales. I felt like, and I think I said this at the start of the recording, I felt like being in sales was where you went when you didn't have a skill, right? You want an engineer, you wasn't a developer, you didn't he wasn't a graphic designer, whatever skill you want to have, you didn't have it. But what you could do is you could talk to people. So you went and done this role where you get targets put over your head. If you hit them, you hit them. If you don't, you're out the door, right? They just get someone else that can come in. And as I say, I just felt like it wasn't a skill. And for the first 3-4 years of being in sales, even though I wanted to be in sales because I wanted to earn the commission, I felt like I could do it. I was embarrassed to tell people what I did for a living. I was always sort of skirt around it. And so I felt like it was just no skill involved. And then I just had this realization, and again, this links back to being coached, that selling is a skill. There's so many aspects to selling, but here's the problem: like any skill in life, if you want to learn that skill, you have to put in, excuse me, you have to put in the hours, you have to practice, you have to learn, you have to be prepared to fail. But if you're going to fail, fall forwards, get up quickly, dust yourself down and move forwards. And again, like anything, if you want to learn something, you can accelerate towards your goal far quicker by having a coach, right? And look at anything in life. So if I look at me personally, in the last year and a half, I'll be careful about the word learn because I am rubbish. Learn to play golf, right? Like in the sense of a year and a half ago, I couldn't swing a club. Now I've just come back from a golf holiday where I had 3 days playing golf every single day. And you know what? I got round. I didn't embarrass myself. And like I say, loads to learn on golf, but I had a coach. I had 2 coaches at one point where I had 2 different coaches helping me, one for short game, one for long game. If you look at swimming, right, I feel like if far from being athletic, but if you ask me what am I best at, I'll say I'm a swimmer. I had a swimming coach growing up as a kid. In terms of playing a musical instrument, I'm not very good at that. But if I wanted to learn to play the guitar, I would get a coach. If I wanted to learn a language, I would get someone to coach me and help me on that and hold me accountable and make sure that I'm doing the practice needed. And I think, look at any career like that you'd be proud of. Doctors, lawyers, medical practitioners, take any sportsman in the world ever, they've all got coaches. Some of them have got multiple coaches that just help them keep them in the room of success and on track. And sales is no different, right? The stigma, I do feel, is changing, but maybe that is part of the bubble that you and I and everyone listening to this will be in, Fred, right? I know if I speak to my mother-in-law, she will still see what I do as a bad thing. I often joke that I think she thinks I just sell PPI, like I'm a nuisance phone caller, because that's her interpretation of sales. So, but as I say, I feel largely, and maybe it is the bubble effect of our network, the perception of sales is changing a little bit. People are realizing it's a skill. I feel like coaching is talked about so much more in the last 4 or 5 years than what has ever been spoken about before. You know, certainly in the last 10 years, it wasn't a thing when I started out 15 years ago. I feel like I've forgotten the question, but ultimately, I think having a coach is essential. And that's what you asked me. Yeah, as an SDR, when I started out, I told you, Yellow Pages, Thompson Local, a phone. Now as an SDR, we've got to be great cold callers. We've got to almost be poets when it comes to emails. We've got to be comfortable on video, comfortable on voice note. We've got to be fantastic researchers. We've got to build personal brands. Well, how are you meant to learn all of that if no one shows you and no one coaches you and no one works with you? AEs, right? I remember when I started out as an AE, it wasn't called that back then, but it's a presentation job. Give a presentation, see what they think. Now, the art of discovery is spoken about. The art of demos is widely covered. And almost if you don't do an exceptional job, you lose out to someone else at another company that did a better job than you, even if they've got an inferior product. Being a manager, everyone knows that managers were top performers. That doesn't make them a good manager. It doesn't make them a good coach. There's so much they've got to learn. And I learned the hard way, got promoted into a manager role. And now it's like, so Mark, go and build your team. Didn't know how to interview people, didn't know how to onboard people, didn't know how to run one-to-ones, didn't know how to forecast, didn't know how to get people to update the CRM, how to have difficult conversations, how to step away from being people's friends to managing them. There's so much you've got to learn. So a coach can help you at every single stage of your sales career. And I think the further up you go, the irony is the further up the chain you go, the more likely they are to have a coach. But we're not giving it to people at the early stages when they really need it.
Yeah. And that's what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on. You're allowed to promote. You're allowed to promote. That's what MySalesCoach does.
So we try to set out to solve this problem with Refract. So Refract was conversation intelligence, speech analytics, whatever you want to call it. But the dream here was that managers would now have greater visibility into their team sales calls, be able to give them feedback and help them become better sellers. Very much like I was getting in Costa Coffee. Largely successful, got acquired. Here's the problem. We never really solved the problem of sales coaching for multiple reasons. One, the second a manager got busy, they stopped reviewing and coaching calls. They just stopped because they were busy, right? Two, we were relying on managers to be great coaches. But just because they're a manager doesn't mean they were a great coach. Thirdly, coaching is more than just reviewing and coaching sales conversations. So people get excited to speak to me when they know coaching is the number one lever they can pull to help their reps fulfill their potential and accelerate towards their goals as quickly as possible. They know that managers should spend most of their time coaching, but they don't. And what they don't want to do is put a bottleneck on the development of their sales team or of their managers. So they talk to me. We've got a bank of world-class sales coaches, customer success and marketing coaches. And what we do is we put them in the pockets of your SDRs, your AEs, your sales managers, and make them available on demand. So anybody can access a world-class coach and book a session whenever they want it. And we, as I say, we provide that coaching to SDRs, to AEs, and to managers. That's what MySalesCoach does as a business.
Oh, awesome, mate. Awesome. And you're growing and it's all going well. And look, listening to what you said today, can hear why it is so beneficial. So where can people get in touch with you then, Mark?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. If they're looking at the video, they look at my LinkedIn profile, they will notice the picture's about 7 years old, and I've gone through, I think it was 2 lockdowns, a marriage and a kid. So a lot's happened to me in the last sort of 7 years, buying 2 houses, moving twice, I should say. So I definitely look a lot older than my LinkedIn photo, but they can find me on LinkedIn, Mark Ackers, Ackers, and they can visit www.mysalescoach.com or give me a call. Numbers on my LinkedIn profile, but so very few cold calls, lots of emails, but very few cold calls. So yeah, loads of ways to contact me.
Awesome. We'll pop those links into the show notes. We'll put them in so people can click through direct. Mark, I could just carry on talking about this for a long, long time. But yeah, thank you for coming along and sort of sharing that kind of, I don't know, brief introduction really into world of coaching. I think we're going to have to speak again soon.
I'd love that. Let's do that.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.